Donald Trump's a style icon.
That's what I do.
Gas! Live from the Poly Market studio in LA. It's the Young Turks.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to TYT. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian, and we have so much news to get to today. Another resignation within the Biden administration over the handling of the war in Gaza. So we'll get to that at the top of the show. Some big updates in regard to the presidential election. We'll spend some time on that. You have some of the MSNBC pundits losing their minds over the latest New York Times Siena College poll. We'll talk about that. And unfortunately, I have to spend a significant amount of time humiliating myself in the first hour by offering a lengthy correction over a story that we covered a few years ago in regard to a Twitch streamer who goes by Keffals. Turns out she's a massive con artist, and I definitely regret taking anything she ever had to say at face value. But we'll get into those details in this hour as well. In the second hour, John Iadarola will be joining me to talk about the rest of the news, and we have a whole host of stories to get into. There was a story we didn't have time to talk about yesterday in regard to the auto workers for Mercedes in Alabama. They're trying to unionize, and they have been met with some serious union busting tactics. So we'll talk about that in the show as well. And as always, just want to encourage you all to smash that like button. Come on, Bart.
Smash it.
Smash it, okay?
Smash it.
There we go. Easy, free way to help spread the word of TYT and help support the show. You can also support the show by becoming a member. Just go to tyt.com/join and you can become a member that way, or you can hit that join button if you're watching us on YouTube. And of course, members get members only exclusive content every day after the main show. That's our bonus episode, and they get other special members only content that ties into specials that we do. So without further ado, let's get to a pleasant update in regard to members of the Trump administration really taking a stand against the way he has handled the ongoing war in Gaza. Yet another member of the Yet another member of the Biden administration has resigned over the Biden administration's unwavering support and weapons shipments over to Israel. Now, the special assistant to the chief of staff in the Interior Department officially became the first Jewish Biden appointee to step down in protest of the war in Gaza. Her name is Lily Greenberg Call. She had worked for the presidential campaigns of both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Interestingly, she was a longtime activist and an advocate for Israel in Washington and elsewhere before joining the government. So this is not an individual who is, well known for her ferocious critique of Israel. She's actually someone who has a background in being an activist on behalf of Israel. Now, Call wrote in her resignation letter, "I joined the Biden administration because I believe in fighting for a better America, for a future where Americans can thrive, one with economic prosperity, a healthy planet, and equal rights for all people. I have dedicated my career to candidates who I believed would further this vision. However, I can no longer, in good conscience, continue to represent this administration amidst President Biden's disastrous continued support for Israel's genocide in Gaza." She used the word genocide, which I think is an incredible thing to do as a Jewish American, as someone who has a background, doing activism work on behalf of Israel in Washington. And so again, I can't imagine the kind of backlash she's dealing with. I know what kind of backlash we've dealt with for covering the story the way that we have, for using the word genocide and describing what's happening in Gaza. It's incredibly brave of her to resign. I mean, we're talking about her livelihood and career, but also to do so in a way that is, demonstrated in this resignation letter. People in my community lost loved ones during Hamas's attack on October 7th. Beloveds killed, displaced and taken as hostages. I am terrified by rising anti-Semitism around the world, and yet I am certain that the answer to this is not to collectively punish millions of innocent Palestinians through displacement, famine, and ethnic cleansing. She also told the Associated Press that she took issue with how the Biden administration has spoken about Jewish Americans, essentially lumping them all together. By the way, I want to be clear. I have a problem with anyone in any group lumping Jewish people as the same, or lumping any ethnic group or race as the same. And I've seen a lot of that go on. Please don't fall for that kind of disgusting mentality, okay? Please judge people as individuals and never lump people together and assume that they're all the same based on their identity or race or nationality. It's a huge mistake to do that. Now, here's what she had to say about the Biden administration. In her words, basically speaking about Jewish Americans in a way that she did not appreciate. Call pointed to comments by Biden, including at a White House Hanukkah event, where Biden said, were there no Israel, there wouldn't be a Jew in the world who was safe. And at an event at Washington's Holocaust Memorial last week, in which he said the October 7th Hamas-led attacks that triggered the war were driven by an ancient desire to wipe out the Jewish people. So in regard to that, she says, he is making Jews the face of the American war machine, and that is so deeply wrong, she said, noting that ancestors of hers were killed by state-sponsored violence. And I haven't weighed in on Biden's statements, the statements that she took issue with, mostly because the war in Gaza has had so many different details that we wanted to report that some of the statements from Biden, I think we've allowed to kind of fall by the wayside. But I want to make a statement about what he had to say about how Israel is necessary because Jewish people aren't safe anywhere else in the world. I mean, do you think America isn't a safe place for Jewish Americans to be? What a ludicrous thing to say. But anyway, she says the following. She said that the US support for the war overall is an issue. I think the president has to know that there are people in his administration who think this is disastrous, not just for Palestinians, for Israelis, for Jews, for Americans, for his election prospects. And I think Lily is right about that. I mean, when you look at how Biden has continued to lose more and more support among key voters in the Democratic base, we're talking about Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, many of whom reside in a swing state like Michigan. When you're looking at young voters who are now split 50-50 based on the polling between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, I mean, this is not good news for Biden. And he has shown an unwillingness to really hear out Democratic voters who are demanding a ceasefire. And while he had claimed that they were halting weapons shipments to Israel, as we had reported to you yesterday in a breaking news story by the Wall Street Journal, the Biden administration has just approved another $1 billion in weapons transfers to Israel. So I don't know if the timing is a coincidence. That news story broke yesterday and Lily decided to resign and put out this open letter today. But regardless of what the final straw that broke the camel's back was, I do want to show her love and solidarity for doing something that takes a tremendous amount of courage, but also really does end up sacrificing her own career and livelihood. I mean, so much respect for her speaking out the way that she has. And I hope she's okay. And I hope she knows that we here at TYT back her 100%. All right, with that said, let's move on to some other news. Because there's a lot to get to today. Believe it or not, some pretty big updates in regard to the general election.
Where are the polls telling us directionally about the race?
I understand there's a difference, though, with the New York Times Siena poll, and you know this. It's given disproportionate impact. This year, this cycle, it is skewed wildly in Donald Trump's direction. Hold on. And the New York Times feasts on it with clickbait stories like a dozen at a time.
MSNBC's Joe Scarborough, who once identified as a Republican, is big mad over the fact that his preferred presidential candidate, Joe Biden, appears to be a loser in the election polling. Now, we've been talking about election polling endlessly on this show because the polling does not look good for Biden. And when you look at swing states in particular, which essentially decide the election, in poll after poll, Biden has been struggling. Now, the latest poll is the New York Times Siena College poll that was released earlier this week. That's the one that has really upset Joe Scarborough. And so instead of considering the possibility that Biden is in fact a weak and vulnerable candidate, even against someone as divisive as Donald Trump, he'd rather be in denial and attack the New York Times instead. Let's watch.
The New York Times right now is actively shaping the election cycles where this poll comes out on a Sunday and on Monday people go, oh, and I heard it. And I'm sitting there going, oh, don't be so stupid. That's why we're doing this.
So what's
hold on a second. Hold on. What I hear is after these Siena polls come out, every time New York Times poll says, oh, well, everything that Joe Biden's done since the State of the Union address, all this money that he's put out, all of the campaigning is for naught. No, it's not. No, it's not. There's one poll that's wildly skewed every time. And it does shape, if it's a New York Times poll versus a Morning Consult poll, and the New York Times then amplifies it 15, 16, 17 times, it warps reality.
So the reason why Joe Scarborough is so upset about all of this is because the New York Times Siena College poll does tend to have the worst results for Joe Biden. It's not the only poll that has the worst results for Joe Biden, but it does tend to be an outlier in that the results, especially in the swing states, tend to show that Trump has a far bigger lead over Biden than other polls do. Other polls also show that Trump has a wide lead over Biden. It's just not as wide as the New York Times Siena College poll. Now I'm gonna show you the average of polling in just a moment so you can see that Joe Scarborough is 100% in denial. Now let's take a look at what the the results are, right? So this is the New York Times Siena College poll that was released earlier this week. And when you look at how Biden is performing against Donald Trump in the swing states, he ain't doing so well. So the poll shows Trump beating Biden in every battleground state except for Wisconsin, where Biden leads 47-45, but the result is within the margin of error. The biggest gap is in Nevada, where Trump leads 50-38. That is a massive lead. And it goes beyond the margin of error, obviously. Trump leads Arizona 49 to Biden's 42. Trump also leads in Michigan 49-42. And then you have Georgia where Trump leads again by 10 points, 49-39. Now, the swing states, as we all know, matter. They matter the most. The swing states end up deciding the election. And the swing states are more important, or the polling of the swing states, in my opinion, are more important than what the national polls say. Because remember, the election is decided by the Electoral College. It's not decided by popular vote. And so the national polls, sure, it's a good metric to look at to see how your preferred candidate is doing. But if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty, you want to look at how your preferred candidate is performing specifically in these swing states. But that doesn't stop Scarborough from using national polling to make it seem like Biden is absolutely killing it.
At the same, put this New York Times Ipsos poll.
The Ipsos.
Put it back. Run at the same time by the New York Times. Biden's ahead by 4 points nationally. 4 points nationally. Not even an article about it.
Yeah, hey, genius. There's no article about it. Or maybe there isn't as much attention paid to that national poll because again, the swing states matter more, right? You want to look at who is likely to win the electoral votes necessary to claim victory. Now, look, I want to also be fair to Joe Scarborough because there has been quite a bit of criticism in regard to the methodology used in the New York Times Siena College poll. I want to be absolutely clear. I am not a polling expert, so I feel super uncomfortable weighing in on whether or not the methodology is sound. But here is what the Times shared about how they conducted the poll, just in full transparency. I want to disclose that to you all. Our polls are conducted by telephone using live interviewers in both English and Spanish. Nearly 95% of respondents were contacted on a cell phone for this poll. So they're reaching out to people on cell phones, not on landlines. Voters are selected for the survey from a list of registered voters. The list contains information on the demographic characteristics of every registered voter, allowing us to make sure we reach the right number of voters for each party, race, and region. They also say that each state poll, and this is important because it has to do with the margin of error. Each state poll has a margin of error ranging from plus or minus 3.6 points in Pennsylvania to plus or minus 4.6 points in Georgia. In theory, this means that the results should reflect the views of the overall population most of the time, though many other challenges create additional sources of error. And I checked to see whether, Trump is within the margin of error in the swing states where he is leading Biden, and he is not within the margin of error. So it's, again, not really looking good for Biden if you're just focusing on this polling. But I think it would be a mistake to just focus on one or two polls. I think the right thing to do to get a better read on how your preferred candidate is performing is to take a look at the average of polls. And that is what I would like to do right now. In fact, I'll do that in a minute. I do want to also just go to one more clip from this exchange on MSNBC where a gentleman named John Helaman was luckily on the set to gently push back on Joe Scarborough because he got a little bit conspiratorial in regard to the New York Times Siena College poll. It seems like he was trying to accuse them of putting their thumb on the scale and essentially swaying hearts and minds through this outlier polling. So here's what Helaman had to say about that.
I'm not going to carry water for the New York Times or for the methodology of this poll. I'll keep going back to a thing that I try to say every time we talk about these things, which is that I'm really interested, and I know you know this, is like, what are the polls telling us directionally about the race?
I understand there's a difference though with the New York Times Siena poll, and you know this.
All I'd say about this is that I agree with you that the problem to me, unless you want to suggest you think there's a conspiracy at the Times about this, which
their methodology is bizarre.
Well, you're talking about
Larry Sabato said this,
right.
Walston said this.
Joe, you're saying something more than that, though. You're saying the New York Times is systematically putting these polls out in a way to try to amplify them to drive the news cycle.
Yes,
I am saying that. And I'm saying I'd like to know, I'm curious, as someone who I understands your level of sophistication about reading the media, why you think that's true. What I'm trying to say is, I agree with you. The best bulwark against any polls, outliers, or anything else for people who are actually consumers of this information is to not let any given news outlet or any given poll shape your perception of the race unduly.
But John, that's not realistic.
Okay, all right. God, I have so many things to say about that clip we just watched. So look, I love how Joe Scarborough was like, the methodology is bizarre, according to other Biden supporters in the media. Okay, can you explain to us why you feel that the methodology is bizarre? Like, at least spend a little bit of time getting into the details as to why the methodology is not sound. Also, people do not change their voting behavior based on polls. I mean, there might be a handful of people who do that, but overall, people vote based on incentives and disincentives, right? And so I'm not gonna vote for a different candidate because I see a New York Times Siena College poll saying that Biden is gonna lose. I vote based on taking a look at my life, taking a look at the two candidates, and asking myself which of these two candidates would be best for improving my life and the lives of others in this country. Okay, I would think about what issues matter the most to me. This is how Americans operate, okay? The idea that they're gonna be swayed by the New York Times putting their thumb on the scale through a method, a study that doesn't have sound methodology is ridiculous to me. But we've had 4 years of Biden. We have had 4 straight years of President Joe Biden. It's amazing to me because even when it comes to the national polling that Joe Scarborough was trying to emphasize and amplify, you have Biden leading by 3 points when he's running against a man who's facing 4 separate indictments, a man who's considered a threat to democracy, a man that Democrats have been fear-mongering about from day one. You're having a tough time beating that guy. Maybe take a minute to ask yourself why. Why is that? Could it be that there are flaws in the campaign? Could it be that Biden is not a candidate favored by some usual Democratic voters because he made all sorts of promises he didn't keep in the 4 years that he has served as president? So departments within his administration have done some good work. We've covered those stories, okay? One of the more recent ones that we covered had to do with the transportation department ensuring that Americans get automatic refunds when their flights are severely delayed or when their bags are lost by the airline companies. That is a good thing. But those are small things in the grand scheme of things, okay? When you take a look at how Americans are feeling about their economic situation. And when they maybe reflect on some of the things that Biden promised when he was running the first time around, like a Voting Rights Act. Did he accomplish that? Did he even fight for that? No. Paid family leave? No. Public option? He ran on that during his first campaign. No. Consequences for Mohammed bin Salman after he ordered the assassination, the execution and dismemberment of a Washington Post journalist and US resident. He said he was gonna do something about that. Did he? No. I mean, it's just, it goes on and on. Endless military funding for foreign wars? Yes. So when it comes to the resources necessary to deliver on policies that Biden promised, oh, we don't have those resources, how are we gonna pay for it? We got to nickel and dime Americans. When it comes to funding foreign wars abroad, Biden will literally circumvent Congress in order to get that funding and that weaponry to other countries. You don't think that that upsets Americans? You don't think Americans are paying attention to that? Wondering, hey, why am I dealing with the high cost of living, endless inflation, all of these economic frustrations, high interest rates? Our government's telling us there's nothing they can do about it. And then at the same time, it seems like there's endless resources for wars abroad. These things are gonna hurt him politically. The chickens eventually do come home to roost. And the fact that, Democratic voters and more importantly, members of the liberal media space, like they just refuse to accept it and instead look for excuses or other people to blame. In this case, you have Joe Scarborough blaming the New York Times for the flaws of the Biden administration and the Biden campaign. That's really what's going on here. Okay, now let's take a look at the average of polling. Because the averages matter more than a single poll. If you're looking at a single poll, you will maybe be led astray, okay? Because there could be issues with the methodology of a single poll. But why don't we take a look at the swing states and what the average of polling says? Let's take a look at Wisconsin, where of the swing states, Biden is doing the best and he's still losing by 0.6 points to Donald Trump. Again, this is not based on one poll, this is based on an average of all polls done in the state of Wisconsin. Let's go to the next one. All right, this is Arizona, where based on an average of polls, Trump is leading Biden by 5.2 points. Not good, let's go to the next one, Nevada. This again, based on the average of polls out of the state of Nevada, where Trump is leading 6.2. All right, let's look at the rest. If you look at the average of polls for Georgia, Trump is leading Biden by 4.6 points. You have Michigan, where Trump is leading by 0.8 points, which is actually surprising because Michigan is the state where you have all those uncommitted voters who are really unhappy with what's happening in Gaza. Pennsylvania, Trump is leading by 2.0 points. In North Carolina, Trump is leading by 5.4 points. Again, average of polls. I didn't do the polls. I'm not running for president. I'm not advising Biden on anything. I am just sharing this information with you. That is it. And the polls are supposed to communicate to the candidates that they need to recalibrate, that they need to reconsider how they're running their campaign. Biden is unwilling to do that. Biden wants to play games with his support with Israel, where he claims that he's gonna withhold weapons, and then literally a day later, he approves another $1 billion in military aid to Israel. And he thinks that Democratic voters aren't paying attention to that. They're paying attention to that. He is too old, and look, it's not even about his numerical age. Who cares about that? Because you look at someone like Bernie Sanders, and he's up there in age too. But there's a difference, guys, and we all know it. You could lie to yourself and you can be in denial all you want. There is a difference between how Biden appears when he's out there campaigning. He does appear frail, and Americans see that, and it scares them because it is an important job to be the president, the leader of the United States of America. And yeah, Trump's up there in age as well, but you have to be honest about the fact that he does not look frail. And so Biden promised he wasn't gonna run for a second term, but he's so concerned about his legacy, he doesn't wanna be a one-term president, that he reneged on that and he was insisting to run for a second term. And he also said that he believes he's the only one who can beat Donald Trump. All the other Democrats in the country, all those other Democratic politicians, chop liver. They can't beat Trump. Only Biden can beat Trump. All right, well, I guess we're gonna have to wait and see what happens. By the way, the Real Clear Politics average of the national polling shows that Trump is actually ahead by 1.1 points. So finally, I take you to Biden's favorite news broadcaster, and that's Fareed Zakaria, who had a segment on how Biden's doing. He favors Biden, he's hoping and praying that Biden wins, but he's concerned. Let's watch.
I have to admit, none of this is playing out as I thought it would. Trump is now leading in almost all the swing states, but behind those numbers lie even more troubling details. As someone worried about the prospects of a second Trump term, I think it's best to be honest about reality. I understand that polls are not always accurate, but in general, they have tended to underestimate Donald Trump's support, not overestimate it. I doubt that there are many shy Biden voters in the country.
Reality is reality. You can choose to live in denial, but those who take that option are usually in for a rude awakening. I think it's better to live in reality and see if there's any way to save a sinking ship, but it doesn't seem like Biden's interested in that, and it certainly doesn't help that you have the liberal media providing cover for Biden and allowing him to live in absolute delusion about where both candidates stand in this general election. Well, they're gonna have two debates, and when we come back from the break, I'll talk about the Biden video that's making waves today, where he challenged Trump to a debate. Did Trump accept? Well, you're gonna have to come back and see.
Read the polls. Read the polls, Jack.
All right, what's up, guys? Welcome to our first social break of the day. Your left one writes in our member section and says, my wife has lost 11, oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. My wife has lost 11 family members in Gaza so far. This is my son's first presidential election. We live in Wisconsin, one of the few swing states. Nobody in our family is voting for Biden. I don't blame you. I mean, I'm so sorry. Please give your wife a big hug for us. And I feel awful that she's going through, that you guys are going through this. So many people are, and it's awful. Ouch, my Nards writes in, and thank you for doing so, because I don't know, I just love that handle. Trump versus Biden, can't wait to see Biden remember all those campaign promises he forgot about. Trump just has to land a couple good one-liners and make him flustered. So we'll see. I mean, look, if you reflect back on the Biden-Trump debates the first time around, I actually think Biden did well. I don't know how he's gonna perform this time around, but we'll see. Join TYT member says, anybody else feeling extremely depressed over the past few months? I don't know what to do about this besides ignore the news, and I just cannot ignore the world. I feel lost, but I'm happy to have the TYT family. Also join TYT members. So first of all, thank you for encouraging people to join and support the show. I have a lot of practice with this, and I'm not gonna pretend like it's easy, but yes, the news depresses me. But I've also learned to acknowledge the fact that there's only so much I have any control over, right? There's only so much you have control over. And so what I would say is, when it comes to your immediate surroundings and when it comes to the things that make you happy, focus on that. Focus on making your immediate surroundings exactly what you want and need. Spend as much time with people you love and who fulfill your life and enrich your life. And understand that you are not in control of all of the things that are happening in the world and in the country that are making you upset. And I always take solace in knowing I have the TYT family and like-minded individuals I can turn to and vent to. So you're more than welcome here, obviously. We love you, and hang in there. Just try to focus on the positive things in your personal life and go for a walk. I know that, and I'm not saying that dismissively, like, oh, go touch grass. I'm saying that because literally for me, being out in nature has been so helpful and helps to ground me when everything feels out of control. Little Mac McG writes in and says, nothing humiliating about correcting yourself, Anna. We all make mistakes. Owning them is called being responsible, a responsible adult and human being. Fellow responsible adult and human beings who also make mistakes will think no less of you. Making on-air corrections is called. Everyone, Anna Kasparian here with you, and thank you to Little Mac McG for the comment. This was during the social break, and I got some encouragement over a correction I'm gonna do later in the hour, so thank you for that. Okay, I wanted to stay on the topic of election-related news, and this one is probably one of the biggest news stories of the day. It was totally unexpected. Let's watch.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice. So let's pick the dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays.
This morning, President Joe Biden finally accepted Trump's challenge to debate after months of hesitation. Now, the way it's being framed in the media today is that Biden challenged Trump to a debate, but if you just rewind a little bit, it really did start with Trump demanding a debate with Biden, and we'll tell you how it all played out in just a moment. Now, in a matter of hours, the details have all been arranged, setting the stage for what will probably be an underwhelming showdown, who knows, between the two geriatric men. So Trump accepted Biden's challenge and posted this on Truth Social, of course. Crooked Joe Biden is the worst debater I have ever faced. He can't put 2 sentences together. It's time for a debate so that he can explain to the American people his highly destructive open border policy, new and ridiculous EV mandates, the allowance of crushing inflation, high taxes, and his really weak foreign policy, which is allowing the world to catch on fire. I am ready, he writes, and willing to debate Crooked Joe at the 2 proposed times in June and September. I would strongly recommend more than 2 debates and, for excitement purposes, a very large venue. Although Biden is supposedly afraid of crowds. Is he afraid of crowds? I don't think that's true, but anyway. That's only because he doesn't get them. Okay, so he's afraid of crowds because he never has to deal with big crowds. That doesn't make any sense. But anyway, just tell me when, I'll be there. So he accepted the challenge. He wants to do the debate. And he ends his post with, let's get ready to rumble, okay? So shortly after Biden sent out that video that we just showed you, he also posted this. I've received and accepted an invitation from CNN for a debate on June 27th. Over to you, Donald. As you said, anywhere, anytime, any place. CNN announced that Jake Tapper and Dana Bash will moderate that debate. And not long after, he responded to CNN. I'm sorry, not long after Biden, they responded to Biden. Biden posted again. I've also received and accepted an invitation to a debate hosted by ABC on Tuesday, September 10th. Trump says he'll arrange his own transportation. I'll bring my plane too. I plan on keeping it for another 4 years. So Trump accepted both debates. They're gonna have 2 debates. That's a good thing. They should have debates. It's the general election. I thought it was ridiculous when it seemed like everyone had accepted that there might not be a debate at all. So we'll see if there's gonna be more debates. He then went rogue and simultaneously proposed and accepted a 3rd debate. Donald Trump did. Let's take a look at that. Please let this truth serve to represent that I hereby accept debating crooked Joe Biden on Fox News. The date will be Wednesday, October 2nd. The hosts will be Brett Baer and Martha McCallum. Thank you. And then he signs off with DJT. Now, the Biden camp doesn't like this. They did not agree to a debate on Fox News, and here's what they said in their response. Donald Trump has a long history of playing games with debates, complaining about the rules, breaking those rules, pulling out at the last minute or not showing up at all, which he's done repeatedly in all 3 cycles he's run for president. He said he would debate President Biden anytime, anywhere, any place. In fact, he said and posted it dozens of times with varying degrees of comprehension and basic grammar. President Biden made his terms clear for 2 one-on-one debates, and Donald Trump accepted those terms. No more games, no more chaos. No more debate about debates. We'll see Donald Trump on June 27th in Atlanta if he shows up. So we'll see if that's gonna develop any further, but for now at least, it appears that there will only be 2 debates. Now, let's talk about debate reluctance and also some strict rules that are being set in regard to how these debates will go down. So it's funny to see the candidates get so excited about the idea of a debate. I mean, again, this should just be a given, that the default, standard operating procedures when you're dealing with a general election. Now, Trump had refused to debate any of his Republican primary opponents, and to be clear, I think that worked out well for him. He was so ahead of all of the other Republican candidates that he just decided to skip the debates, and it didn't hurt him at all. But as soon as he won the primary, he started challenging Biden to debates. Biden spent a long time refusing to give a straight answer on whether he would be willing to debate Trump for this election. And let's take a look at this clip from February.
Mr. President, Donald Trump is ready to debate you right now. Do you accept?
On radio. You want to debate you immediately, he says.
Immediately?
Yes.
Will you debate him?
If I were him, I'd want him to debate me too. We got nothing else to do.
When asked in March if Biden would debate Trump, Biden said it depends on his behavior. Depends on his behavior. What does that even mean? You should say yes, this is a presidential election. Yes, I'm going to debate my opponent on the other side of the aisle. And it was only last month on the Howard Stern show that Biden stated that he would in fact be willing to debate. Now, Biden's campaign has set some rules and conditions on the upcoming debates with Trump. So there will be no live audience, just Biden, Trump, and the moderators. Third party and independent candidates will only be included if they can be on enough state ballots to potentially win 270 electoral votes. Let's keep it real. These rules are meant to keep RFK Jr. out of the debate stage. Okay, that's what these rules are really about. They would also need to win 15% of the vote in at least 4 national polls. That's all, again, obviously meant to keep RFK Jr. out of the debates. Now, Chuck Todd took a different line than the Biden campaign, and he argued that, including RFK Jr. might actually help Biden. Let's watch.
I think if you've ever spent a lot of time watching Robert Kennedy Jr. speak, I think if you're Joe Biden, you're going to want him on the debate stage. Yes. I think there will be a point in the fall that they will actually see that as an asset. I'm sort of in the minority on this.
Well, let's just face it.
But I think that
he has a vocal issue.
He does.
It's an ailment.
And I think it will weirdly help Biden look less, any of his issues come across less, because I don't think a lot of people realize this about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And I think it'll be interesting. But if he's on, I'm not ruling out the possibility he makes it to the second debate.
Oh my God. Oh my God, that video. Okay, just understand what Chuck Todd is saying here. RFK Jr. has, a vocal issue. If you've ever heard him talk, you know what I'm talking about. And it sounds so bad that maybe it can help look Biden and how frail he appears, like not be so bad, not look so bad for viewers of the debate. I don't know if that's a good, I don't know if I would have said that out loud, but Chuck Todd did, so there it is. I mean, in that is the implication that physically Biden's not looking good. And so let's get someone on the debate stage that sounds really bad because of a vocal issue that could help Biden look a little better. Now, the Biden campaign requested some other things. So here's one of the other conditions. The debaters' microphones will immediately cut off when their time is up. I actually think that's the right way to do this, because you don't want to hear them speaking over each other and fighting. Like, you want to hear their answers clearly without interruption. And believe it or not, Sean Hannity agrees. Let's watch.
He proposed a format that I think is extraordinarily favorable for the president, which is if you're not talking, your mic's not on. I think one of the difficulties in 2020 is probably Donald Trump in that first debate was too aggressive. This will then kind of put, rails in place so that one person talks at a time. And the more Joe talks, I think the worse he does.
So Hannity in favor of shutting down their mics because he's concerned about some of the, I don't know if weaknesses is the right word, but some of the flaws that Donald Trump brings to the table during these debates. He's worried about Trump being a little too aggressive and turning voters off in that regard. So there you have it. The debates are gonna happen. There will be 2 of them at least. And I think overall that's a good thing. I think the American people deserve, even though they've already seen them debate previously during the last election cycle, I think it's worth it to hear what they have to say about some of the issues impacting Americans today. What are their solutions for inflation? What about the migrant crisis? The war in Gaza? How do they differ from one another? I want to know, how would they differ from one another in responding to this war in Gaza? What would Trump do differently? I want to hear that answer, because he's been able to kind of like skirt these issues because of the fact that they haven't been on a debate stage. No one's really asked him, hey, what would you do differently from Joe Biden? You keep saying that you do a better job, but how? And so I think that the debates will be interesting, to say the least. I hope they ask good questions, and I hope the moderators do a decent job. But overall, obviously, I think there should always be debates between the 2 sides in a presidential election. Saying that we don't need to see that is a ridiculous thing to claim, but luckily, we're gonna get 2 of them. So we'll be doing special coverage of the debates. We're currently working hard to plan that as we speak. So you guys can obviously tune into TYT as we cover those debates. For now, though, we're gonna take a break, and when we come back, a big correction on a streamer that we did coverage of 2 years ago named Keffels. Twitch community, we have Cascadia Hermit, who makes a really good point about the press. The thing about mainstream media is that they've gotten complacent. They've been shaping the narrative and manufacturing consent for so long that they don't think there is anything to fear so long as they stick to a narrative. This is why they stay so positive about Biden. I think that there's some truth to that for sure. I think there's also something about human nature where we want to, it takes a lot to acknowledge that something you don't like is happening. And a lot of people would rather be in denial about that bad thing happening. I mean, that has been very clear to me, especially over the last few years, in regard to my own political side. Okay, so yeah, I just think it's hard to accept reality. Reality kind of sucks, right? So it would be better to just deny it's happening rather than accept it. But I think accepting reality allows you to maybe change your behavior if it has to do with you or if it has to do with a candidate. Obviously, maybe they need to recalibrate their campaign. Someone had also asked me, oh, well, what do you think Biden can do to kind of change course and improve his numbers? I mean, there's so many crises happening right now, right? The migrant crisis is still happening, and it's really impacting Democratic strongholds in the country, including New York, including Denver, Colorado. I mean, we actually have a story about the migrant crisis later in the show, mostly to dunk on Eric Adams and something unhinged he said and insane he said. But yeah, I mean, these are issues that are impacting local communities that need to be addressed, and I just don't think they've been addressed. Green New Dealer Dragon says TYT should host a third-party debate. Those two will be boring AF. Let's go over to our YouTube members. Welcome to all of our new members. Thank you to Morgan, who gifted a TYT membership, and Sam Monica, who gifted 5 TYT memberships. Mig says, sup Anna, carrying the week, sup. Can't do it without my team though, so keep them in mind, please. They work really hard. Sid writes in and says, Anna, I love you solo. You're very articulate. I love your passion as well. Thank you so much, Sid. I appreciate that. Billy Stage says, I don't have time to listen to multiple news broadcasts and rely on TYT. I appreciate when they correct themselves because I value honesty and authenticity more than carrying water for one viewpoint. That is music to my ears, and I appreciate you so much. Thank you for saying that. BO writes in and says, Anna, I love your great important work, but we can all sense your stress level, and I really hope you succeed in finding time to balance so you don't burn out. I've actually had a really good week, guys. Like, I'm surprised at how happy I am this week, so thank you. But yes, I sometimes do feel deeply stressed out, but today is not one of those days. All right, we've got 12 seconds. Sticky Feet says, the one thing that doesn't scare me about Trump is he's incredibly lazy. He doesn't want to actually govern should he win. That is a really good point. You're right.
No, not the smelly BO, but the presidential BO. I'm Debbie Schlussel.
Gambling Shark writes in 2 super chats. Thank you so much. And I want to read the comment before we kind of move to different topics and kind of forget about the general election. Scarborough is upset because he knows the truth that legacy media propaganda, even though it doesn't work on the young, can affect the way some people think. The polls may not affect them, but if they keep hearing Biden will lose, there's a small percentage of low info voters that could make a difference, that will lean toward who they think will win. He wants the Times to be propagandizing that even if he is behind, even if he is behind, he could still win. Yeah, that is the point he was trying to make. I just don't buy it, especially when you consider the fact that people who are likely to vote for Biden would never turn around and vote for Trump. I mean, they might stay home if they think Biden doesn't have a chance, so he might have a point there. But I don't think that, a single poll is going to have that much of an impact on voting behavior. And if anything, if the polling indicates that Trump has a lead, that might even galvanize Democratic voters and motivate them to show up to the polls and vote for Biden so Trump doesn't win. But overall, guys, the fact that this is a close race is insane, isn't it? I mean, shouldn't it be insane? We're talking about a presidential candidate on the Republican side who has 4 separate indictments, and we don't have a Democratic candidate who could easily beat him. That's an issue. And that's all I'm trying to get at. And stop living in denial for the liberal media pundits who want to live in denial, and more importantly, lie to their audiences about what's really going on. I think they're doing their audience a disservice. Speaking of doing their audience a disservice, I myself have done the audience a disservice that I want to do a correction on right now, and I'll also offer an apology, because I, like others, was conned and duped by a streamer who goes by Keffals. And so let's get into it. Back in 2022, TYT covered a story involving a transgender streamer named Clara Sorrenti, who goes by Keffals. Now, at the time, she had alleged that she had been violently swatted by anti-trans harassers on a platform called Kiwi Farms. Many elements to the story ended up being false, and we unwittingly helped her promote her fraudulent crowdfunding effort. Now, a streamer by the name of Mudahar investigated Keffals and provided the receipts indicating that she is in fact a fraud. It is a lengthy video, and he gets into other issues with Keffals that I'm not gonna get into because we didn't talk about those other issues. But if you wanna watch that video, and I highly recommend you do, you can watch it on his YouTube channel, Some Ordinary Gamers. We will also link to it in the description box. Now let's actually get into the nitty-gritty. Now, after she had been swatted, and by the way, she was swatted. That's the one thing that is true. But after she had been swatted, she launched a GoFundMe on August 9th of 2022 to raise money after the incident. And it's important to outline exactly what she claimed she was doing with the money, why she was raising the money, and how she was going to use the money. Let's watch.
The video is posted alongside a GoFundMe with the stated intent of helping Clara recoup her losses, move immediately, and build a legal fund to protect her rights. It received widespread media attention, bringing in over $100,000 in donations.
So just to review, the money she raised, according to the GoFundMe page, was meant to help her move immediately for her own safety after she had been swatted, recoup her losses of electronic devices that she said the cops had seized, that they'd taken from her, and also sue the London Police Service in Ontario, Canada, where the swatting happened, and to protect her rights, which she reiterated in a later stream.
To my lawyer today, and it's looking like January is the month where I'm going to be filing against the London Police Service.
But she lied about the nature of the swatting itself, and we don't know what she did with the money. Okay, well, we have an idea of what she did with the money based on some of her own admissions, and we're gonna get into that in just a moment. And based on her own admission, she did not use the money that she crowdfunded for the intended purposes. Now, going back to the swatting, she had complained, or she had claimed that she woke up with the Canadian police pointing a gun to her head. She said that's how the swatting incident went down. She later changed that story and said that the police were banging on her door and she had to put clothes on to answer the door as they were banging on it. Let's take a look.
On August 5th, I was woken up by London Police Services pointing an assault rifle in my face at my home. When I was woken up by police officers and saw the assault rifle pointed at me, I thought I was going to die. I feel traumatized.
Her story then changed to an encounter in the hallway. The exact phrasing is that she went into the hallway and then saw the weapon.
The email, Sorrenti says, had given out her real address and resulted in police with guns at her doorstep and her being arrested.
When I went into the hallway and then saw that assault rifle, I screamed and I thought I was going to die.
A month later, she admitted that they didn't enter her apartment until after she was in custody.
They did not go into my apartment until after I was in custody.
So she went from saying that she woke up with the police pointing a gun to her head to changing the story and then changing it back. She changed the story to, no, I met the police outside in the hallway and they didn't enter my apartment until later. And then she went back to claiming that she was afraid for her life. I mean, and remember, Keffels had gone so far as to claim that she was a victim of police brutality and even had the audacity to compare herself to Elijah McClain, who was killed after an interaction with cops. That was the story where emergency workers then showed up and injected him with ketamine, and it was just awful, awful story. She compared herself to him, okay? She wrote on Twitter back on September 25th of 2022, every time I see another story involving an innocent black man being killed by the police, I think back to last month when I had an assault rifle pointed at me by the police and how easily that situation could have escalated if I wasn't white. I hope Elijah McClain finds justice. She also alleged that the police confiscated her computer and other electronic devices that she relied on for her livelihood, for her streaming income. But her devices were actually returned shortly after the swatting incident happened. And she discusses that in the clip you're about to watch.
I started a GoFundMe to move immediately, recoup my losses, and build a legal fund to protect my rights.
But there were no losses to recoup. The devices were returned after 3 days.
I eventually got my stuff back in like 3 days and got an apology from the chief of police.
So if you didn't need the money to pay for new devices for your streaming, what did you use the money for? We're gonna get to that in a bit. So she said that she fled Canada for the UK for her own safety, so Kiwi Farms wouldn't be able to find her, which was weird because why the hell would you broadcast to the world where you fled to if you fear for your own safety? Well, she actually changed that story as well, claiming that she actually fled the country for a different reason, which, by the way, her donors were not informed about. Her donors had donated money to her so she could pay for her moving expenses because she was afraid for her safety due to Kiwi Farms. But that actually wasn't the case. So what was the case? Let's watch.
The truth is, I left the country because of my ex and because I was scared of my ex. Because my ex was abusive and abused me emotionally and yelled at me and consistently coerced me into sex. That's why I left, but I couldn't tell anyone.
No one should believe anything she's saying. No one should take what she says at face value. She's a con artist, she is a liar, and I have no idea what her ex was like or how her ex treated her. I'm just saying that because you should be very suspicious of any claim coming out of this woman's mouth. She is a brazen liar, and we've got more proof of that. So now we know that that the money that she raised to move for her own safety following the swatting due to transphobes was actually used for a different purpose. At some point, she alleged that she succeeded in getting Kiwi Farms taken down from the internet. And while that may have been true for a very, very short period of time, that wasn't actually the case. Kiwi Farms is up and running stronger than ever. And she refused to accept that and acknowledge that. That's a smaller thing. For me, the biggest issue here is the fact that she took advantage of kind-hearted people who donated their hard-earned money to help her out. And they ended up donating money to her when she lied about a whole host of things and did not end up using the money, over $100,000, on the intended purposes. So let's talk about where the money was actually spent. So when it comes to her new place, it turns out that she did pay rent for a new place. I mean, she didn't move for the reasons that she originally stated to raise the money, which was that she was afraid of Kiwi Farms. She moved because she was allegedly emotionally abused by her ex, which again, don't take anything she says at face value. And so she did pay for rent though. And she admitted that in the clip you're about to watch.
I'm using the GoFundMe money to pay an entire year in advance.
Now, which is not something she ever said she was gonna do, and a huge departure from just moving. Clara moves into a luxury apartment and with a low approximation amounting to $28,000.
She moves into a luxury apartment and pays a full year of rent up front using that GoFundMe money, which she admitted in the clip that we showed you. Okay, great. She also admitted to using money to buy new streaming equipment for her new place with professional studio lights and everything. She also talked about using the money for her personal security.
I consulted with a security company and they made all of my devices hack-proof and they gave me tips on not getting doxxed again. They also helped me with a whole bunch of other stuff that I can't talk about because I signed an NDA, like a non-disclosure agreement. I already hired a lawyer and all of the information between me and my lawyer is privileged and confidential and I can't talk about it. So the money towards a legal fund is being utilized, but until the point where I can actually talk about what I'm doing, I can't say anything.
That's very convenient that you can't really talk about the details of how you're using that money for a legal fund. Okay, and she possibly used some of that money on drugs and definitely on rehab.
8 days into a cocaine bender, I found out that the coke that I was doing was cut with meth. So for 8 days straight, I was doing coke and meth. Started doing coke and meth and benzos, and I was planning on ordering him from the dark net.
After the backlash, Clara went into rehab on February 22nd. In the next few days, I will be admitted to rehab. The doctor said that because of the drugs I'm addicted to, without medical supervision, detoxing will kill me. Now, I'm inclined to believe her on this, given that she didn't return until about a month later. Clara later admitted that she spent more money going to rehab than she ever had on actual drugs.
I was in rehab for 34 days before I discharged. I went to the addiction rehabilitation Toronto facility, and it was one of the best decisions I think I've ever made.
While Addiction Rehab Toronto doesn't have prices listed on their sites, aggregators like recovery.com price a 30-day stay at the facility at 20,000 Canadian dollars. And that is a fourth of the entire dollar amount. It's hard to believe that expense, on top of buying enough drugs to end up there in the first place, had no bearing on how that GoFundMe money was used. One of her mods admitted the habit went a bit into the fund money at the end. However much a bit is, we might never know.
Amazing. And finally, I think one of the most damning parts of this lengthy video that Mutahar put together had to do with a damning leak from a private group chat that Keffels was part of. She talks about the money that was crowdfunded, what it was used for, and how quickly it was depleted.
This is what I was shown. The first is from a screenshot from a private group chat dated November 30th, 2022. Feels really bad watching the GoFundMe deplete. The rest will cover a year's rent and my psych fees if I talk to a psychologist once a week for the next 11 months. Ellen tried to comfort me by reminding me that it was an emergency fund. I kept trying to think of how it depleted so fast, and it's just so many little things. Travel and replacing furniture and helping my friends out, buying new streaming gear and clothes. If legitimate, this is an admission that the GoFundMe had greatly depleted after just 2 months.
Did the donors know that Keffels was going to spend the money on psych fees, on streaming equipment, on all these things that were not listed on her GoFundMe page? Of course they didn't know that. Did they know that the group that Keffels was actually harassed by was not Kiwi Farms, based on the research that Mutahar did, that it was a different platform that she, for whatever reason, did not want to go after because she didn't want to draw attention to them because of what they had been posting on their platform? Listen, I feel sick to my stomach knowing that I amplified a con artist on the show. Obviously, I did not know she was a con artist. I did not do that on purpose. But at the end of the day, I'm the host and I am responsible for what I say on this program. I'm sure some of our viewers unfortunately donated money to her out of the kindness of their hearts because they thought they were helping her. And so these are the kinds of stories that keep me up at night because, as I've said before on this show, I feel that I have a responsibility to the audience. And if I ever make a mistake, as I did with this story, I am going to take the time to correct it and take full responsibility for it. We have made changes in how we decide to cover certain stories now. For instance, we will not be promoting any crowdfunding unless we can vouch for the crowdfunding ourselves, unless we know the individual personally who is trying to raise money. But I would also say that for all the other mainstream media outlets who fell for this con artist, that includes The Guardian, CNN, NBC News, NPR. Can we get a correction from you guys too? Because they seem to never want to revisit the work they've done and the misreporting they've engaged in. The fact that they were conned by a con artist like Keffels. And there's so many people in this country, myself included previously, who trusted these sources. And now I don't trust any of them. Because not only did they also get the story wrong, they never correct the record. And I'd like to see that correction because a bunch of people around the world were totally conned into donating to this woman's crowd fund. So she could spend the money on all sorts of stuff like a year worth of rent, psych fees, streaming equipment, rehab. If people want to donate money to her for those purposes, that's great, but she should be upfront about it, and she wasn't. She lied to people. She kept changing her story. Streamers stream all day long, so it's really hard to catch those moments when the stories are changing, because if you're an adult with a full-time job, you don't have time to sit around and watch a stream all day. But at the end of the day, like, CNN has the resources to dig a little deeper, and they didn't. And so I'm sorry to you guys. I think everyone who donated to that crowd fund need answers from Keffels, and they should be issued a refund immediately. She immediately responded to this news and the takedown video, very deeply researched video that you guys should watch for yourselves. You know how she responded to it? She said it's transphobic because she didn't like the thumbnail art that was used to depict her. It's the same type of art that's used in other thumbnails to depict other people. The weaponizing, the transphobe thing, not gonna work here. The only bad person in this story is Keffels, who literally lied to people and stole money from them. Those people deserve answers. I don't want to hear anything else from her mouth unless she's addressing when and how she's gonna refund the people that she defrauded. And again, I apologize to our audience. I take full responsibility, and I'm gonna be a lot more careful and a lot more skeptical of people moving forward. We gotta take a break. John Iadarola will join me for the second hour.
Don't do math.
You would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one. You're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said no, other than day one.
By locking up his enemies, by breaking all the rules, the courts, yeah, right. Them and what army?
This country needs a dictator. I hate to say that, but it's the truth.
It's the truth. From the Young Turks, Americans saying they want a dictator.
I'd rather have Donald Trump as a dictator for 4 years.
I'm going dictator Trump for sure.
How crazy will his supporters go?
I'm going to be a dictator for one day.
Everywhere you look, things are getting more expensive. Here at TYT, we understand this. That's why we're not gonna price gouge you or use inflation as an excuse to raise our prices. A TYT membership is not your typical subscription, but basic membership is still just $4.99. So what do you get for that price? For starters, you're getting exclusive programming, unique exclusive designs from Shop TYT, access to a members only chat, giveaways, emojis, and so many other amazing perks. But most importantly, you're helping to make an impact. As a TYT member, you not only help us do the shows every day, but you drive real positive change in the process. In 2017, we helped to start Justice Democrats right here on TYT. That's a group that got a dozen progressives elected into Congress. That's amazing, you did that. Your support also funds TYT's very own investigative reporting. Just recently, our reporters exposed the Fellowship Foundation and pressured lawmakers into boycotting that bigoted event. Isn't that amazing? We raised over $30,000 for Jackson, Mississippi, and delivered clean water to thousands of people in need. Our petitions, polls, and community of activists help keep the corruption of Washington in check. That's the impact of what just $4.99 a month from our members can do. And we're just getting started. Positive change doesn't occur overnight, but with your contribution, we can make it happen together.
I got pulled in. They told me, hey, listen, Cenk, we're insiders. We are the establishment. People in Washington tell me that they're concerned about your tone. We think that there's a better role for you, and it's not in 6 o'clock. The problem with the mainstream media is they're desperate to get access. They don't challenge the government. They don't challenge power. We're supposed to challenge the government. That's the role of the media.
Components that corrupt our politicians, I think, also corrupt mainstream media. It's really difficult for cable outlets to talk about things like income inequality, wealth inequality, when the advertisers that are funding their shows are the same corporations that want to ensure that the same system continues. People watch digital media or new media, they get a completely different message. They focus on the issues that matter or resonate more with the constituency. We need to know one thing. Is the corporate media incompetent?
Corporate media, I can't hear you. Establishment press, where are you? I can't hear you. But the media's position I am clear on. Everything is pro-war, so everything is just framed that way. In this case, I mean, war is inevitable, right? I mean, the defense contractors should get a couple more $1 trillion. You ready for the stunning results? Only 6% of people say they have a great deal of confidence in the press. Wakey, okay? Progressives don't like the media either. You know why? It's the corporate media. Corporate media sounds like a conspiracy. Wait. Who owns you? Multi-billion-dollar corporations, public corporations. Yeah, we're corporate media because corporations own us. Yeah, that's how it works.
Join the Dragon Squad by becoming a YouTube channel member. Click the join button below or sign up on tyt.com/join to get access to fun emojis, a member-only chat, exclusive Shop TYT designs, ad-free watching, and so many other amazing perks. Plus, you get bragging rights for being part of the coolest community on the internet and help us drive real positive change in the world. The Dragon Squad awaits, so join today.
Godzilla's invading the border. See, when Godzilla attacks, then you can shoot to kill. You won't be successful, but you can try.
John Iadarola is here. We're gonna do the news. How you
Something
doing,
like it.
John?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great, actually.
Good.
You know,
I love the energy.
I'm wearing my power color dress.
Yeah.
Right. You know.
You draw strength from red.
Washed my hair today, and I, blow dried it.
Yeah.
That's always a win.
Is it May already? Okay. Interesting. What is that resting on? But anyway, well, you look great.
Thank you.
You
You
seem
too.
excited to do the news. I'm going to
am.
draw strength from you.
All right.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. Well, maybe you'll draw some strength from this hilarious joke. This is from our member section where this is your Bardo. We are just tulpis. I don't know what that means, but here's the comment. Stop paying attention to polls. Let's ask some Czechs what they think.
I get it.
You know?
Yeah. It's a double meaning.
I see you.
I get it.
I see you. All right.
Jenk somewhere's dying.
Totally.
He fell out of his couch.
All right. Well, we've got some news out of New York today, and it mostly has to do with Eric Adams. Like, I don't know if that man ever really thinks before he speaks. And today's story is a good example of what I mean.
If we had a migrant and asylum seeker plan that states those jobs that we are in high demand, we could expedite. How do we have a large body of people that are in our city and country that are excellent swimmers, and at the same time we need lifeguards?
That's the mayor of New York City, and yeah, he said that with a straight face during a press conference.
He's done so well for himself despite having the worst instincts for a politician ever.
Oh my God, I can't believe he said, okay, so let's unpack. You ready to unpack?
No, let's pack it more. Let's cover it up, shovel some dirt over it, okay?
What a disaster. Okay, so here's what happened. So Adams was asked during a briefing on Tuesday of this week whether lifeguard staffing at the city's pools and beaches would be an issue as Memorial Day approaches. You know, Memorial Day is coming, 3-day weekend. Can't wait. But anyway, put that aside for a minute. And look, that is a legitimate question and something to be concerned about because 2 years ago, Governor Kathy Hochul, because there's a shortage of lifeguards, approved lowering the minimum age for certified lifeguards from 16 to 15. This has to do with COVID. So
15.
Thanks in large part. I know that sounds.
I was gonna guess 21.
15-year-old saving my ass. Like, let's keep it.
Like 16 seems pretty young. Like,
yeah.
Can you even drag? Like, I'm gonna wash away. You're gonna drag me back? I don't even know if you can. Send 2 15-year-olds, then maybe we have something.
Yeah, I do feel that that's a bit young, but nonetheless, the reason why there's a shortage of lifeguards is due to COVID. You know, due to COVID, they had canceled trainings, and there have been far fewer qualified lifeguards over the last couple of years as a result, okay? So they're trying to play catch up, which is part of the reason why Kathy Hochul's like, let's lower the standards a little bit.
Okay, I get it, yeah.
Now, Adams wanted to make a point about the influx of migrants coming to New York City and barriers to obtaining jobs. Like, of course, they have barriers to obtaining jobs. It's part of the reason why you'll hear some Democrats demand that the Biden administration expedite workers' visas. Now, this is a real concern. He just found the most ridiculous possible solution and way to say that migrants should work as lifeguards. So here's more.
How do we have a large body of people that are in our city and country that are excellent swimmers, and at the same time we need lifeguards? And the only obstacle is that we won't give them the right to work to become a lifeguard. That just doesn't make sense. But if we had a plan that say you have a shortage of food service workers and those who fit the criteria, we're going to expedite you. If you have the experience that you are a nurse, which you have a nursing shortage, and we will expedite you. And that's the same with lifeguards. So we have all these eligible people waiting to work with the skills we need to fill the jobs, but we're unable to allow them to work because bureaucracy is in the way. That just does not make sense.
Look, the overall message I get, and he's not necessarily wrong, right? But why, Eric Adams? Like, why do you think migrants are excellent swimmers?
Yeah.
He's obviously referring to how some migrants enter the country and what they go through. So migrants enter America through either the Rio Grande or Pacific Ocean, something that many have, by the way, tragically died attempting to do. It's just
some people have done that. That's just such a weird stereotype to focus on, and to take from these people are so desperate to get in that they are willing to do this dangerous crossing. They love swimming, man. They're the best swimmers.
Can't get enough of the water.
That's not the takeaway from that story. Second note, his explanation of the whole thing about how we need less bureaucracy took 10 times longer than it needs to. We have openings, we have people with the skills, let's get bureaucracy out of the way. That's the explanation. Took way too long. And then he proved that he doesn't need to do the stereotypes because he mentioned food service and nurses.
Nurses, yeah.
He wasn't like, and we have great body of people that are great ladlers. We have a huge body of people, great bedpan scrubbers. We understand that the jobs have specific components. Just tell us the job and tell us that you're letting people work.
Tell us the job and make it clear that there are qualified, people who can fill that role.
That's
right?
all we need to know.
We don't need your commentary about migrants being excellent swimmers, which is obviously, yes, a stereotype and a generalization to say the least. Now, look, he's not wrong that there are some issues associated with the large number of migrants coming into New York City. The city's deputy mayor for Health and Human Services, Ann Williams Isom, said there are more than 197,100 migrants in New York City and 50,000 applications for asylum. So they're not, if they are all asylum seekers, only 50,000 of them have applied for asylum. The rest have not. And I would venture to say a lot of them are not actual asylum seekers. And so that is an issue. Just last week, more than 1,500 migrants arrived in New York City. This is also a problem because of the fact that the federal government has essentially neglected this issue that local governments are having to grapple with without the resources necessary to grapple with it. More than 65,000 migrants are still in the shelter system in New York City and they want jobs. But currently, there is a 60-day shelter limit for migrant families, only 30 for individuals who must wait 6 months after applying for asylum before they can receive a working permit. And part of the reason why is because we have a lot of homeless Americans who need those shelter beds. And so they've had to come up with this solution of evicting people, migrants from these shelters after a specific amount of time, right? It's awful, I don't like it, but there's really no other choice because a lot of American citizens have been infuriated by the fact that they've lost services because of the migrant crisis. And the migrant crisis is real and the federal government has totally neglected their jobs in responding to it appropriately.
Yeah, and I think, look, to whatever extent Joe Biden can individually, as the head of the executive branch, do something, he should. Beyond that, nothing is possible. There will be no bill that will provide funding. The Republicans would literally never support that. And since, as you identified, there is a problem. There's a lot of people, and theoretically, one way that you could sort of counterbalance the problem is, well, if we have all these jobs that desperately need people to work them, we don't have people to work them, then let's let these people use the skills they have. That would be a good thing. Except if you do that, even before they do that, literally coming out of this Eric Adams thing, I'm sure like every right-wing chud with a camera and a microphone is gearing up to scream about DEI and stuff. And Charlie Kirk's gonna be talking about how, well, if I get into a swimming pool and I see like a black lifeguard, I'm gonna be really nervous about it. So like there's this needless social component too, in terms of the culture war that theoretically could hit Eric Adams as well. I do think that streamlining some of this makes sense. It is possible that work permit timeline was established for a very different situation in terms of the number of migrants.
Right, yes.
And might need to be updated.
Yeah, you're right. And there's also the other side of that debate, and there are Democrats who argue this, that including, by the way, the Biden administration in the beginning of the migrant crisis, they didn't want to expedite the workers' visas because they were worried that it was actually going to draw more migrants to the country. That is the argument that they've made. I don't know how much merit there is behind that argument. What I do know is that our immigration system is undeniably broken. And what we are seeing from both Congress and the executive branch is really no genuine response to it. I mean, in the Senate, they worked on a pretty strict Republican pipe dream of a bill that Democrats were willing to sign on to. And then Trump came in and told them, no, do not pass this legislation. I want to campaign on the migrant crisis. And so Republicans then did exactly what Trump wanted, and we didn't get any solution to the border, which some on the left were happy about because they didn't like that bill to begin with. They thought it was too harsh. So it's just obvious gridlock in Congress, obvious self-interest and political motivation that actually doesn't help ordinary people at all and puts ordinary people at a disadvantage. It's just a broken system. And I'm sick of it. That's really the most honest commentary I can give to you about this whole situation. And Eric Adams should think before he speaks. With that in mind, let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll give you an update on the United Auto Workers and the efforts to unionize auto workers in the state of Alabama. Come right back.
That just doesn't make sense.
Art Guy writes in and says, the internet's enduring legacy is to give line crackpots a megaphone to harvest clicks and views. Correct.
Yep.
To that point, Stiff Upper Lib says, am I the only one who feels like we live in a scam economy nowadays? There used to be the Industrial Revolution and also the tech industry. Now it just feels like everyone is trying to get rich by ripping everyone else off. Can't people just get a real job and be a useful member of society?
Nope.
I mean,
that's boring.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're doing. That's what the vast majority of Americans do. So don't let the bad apples, get you down on humans in general. But yeah,
there's a lot.
Just yes, exactly. Just be more skeptical. That's all I'm saying. And by the way, I'm like in this headspace of being skeptical of everything and everyone. Like not people like you, John.
They call that paranoid, actually.
Yeah, but
kidding.
maybe
No,
I need a little. Maybe I need a little bit of that.
Maybe we all do.
Like it makes me so sick to my stomach that I encourage people to donate to a con artist. But anyway, let's move on. I don't want to get into that.
You looked into it as much as you could.
I know, but still. Cray Cray Souffle says, even trans folks can be con artists. Sorry, Anna, and glad you and TYT came forward and corrected the mistake. Thank you. All right, let's move over to our Twitch community. Corporations ate my babies. Says the Twitch community are so generous with memberships. TYT needs to survive through this downturn in politics and news-focused publications. That is true. It is a rough one out there for media in general, but especially for digital media. So thank you to everyone who helps to keep us, in business, helps to keep us afloat. Bradshaw Crew 1 says, thank you, Anna. That was one hell of a correction. Thank you. Thank you to our new members. We have Chow Dragon, Melody Moonfire, High Jump 013, Yanni S. Welcome to TYT Premium. And Nunya is a new member. I hope you guys enjoy our everything that membership has to offer, including our bonus episode today. Jared writes in and says, Anna, you rock my socks off. Only here for you and for Johnny Pie, I'm sure. Okay, but thank you.
It doesn't say that though, does it? Doesn't say that.
Okay, let me go to Max Gaming TJ, who says, hey John, just wanted to let you know, I personally love when you're on with Anna. Much love from Portland, Oregon. Our state's the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have taste and class.
All right, come right back. Episode of TYT, I missed a super chat from this gentleman, so I want to make sure that I read his two super chats right now. This is Guy on his own crusade 35, who says, missed my last super chat, Anna, but I just want to say that you're doing a great job, and especially covering the Middle East story. High respect for TYT. And in a second super chat, Biden has lost his voters. He's a traitor to his own voters. His favoritism toward Israel over mass genocide of Palestinians clearly shows his Middle East policy sucks and takes one side, which is AIPAC or apartheid state of Israel. So yeah, I think a lot of people have lost faith in Biden over how he has handled the war in Gaza. So you have a lot of company in your views for sure. Okay, let's move on. There's a big story out of Alabama. It is a developing story, so we'll see what happens later this week. But it has to do with workers who are trying to unionize.
The next big moment for the labor movement is happening right here. 5,200 Mercedes workers are voting this week on whether or not to join the UAW. If workers win, they'll become the largest new manufacturing union in the country since 1989. It's a pretty big deal. From constant anti-union messages from the company to pressure from politicians, the anti-union attacks are coming at workers from all sides.
This is a pretty big deal, not only because this is a massive effort to unionize workers in Alabama, but because they've also been met with all sorts of tactics meant to union bust. And we're gonna get to those details in a moment. But first, let's talk about the workers themselves. So this is the Mercedes factory in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. It's become the battleground for the future of American labor. It is a big deal. Now, if workers there vote to join the United Auto Workers, it would be a massive victory in a historically anti-union state in the South, of course. And that's why corrupt Republicans and business interests are waging an outright assault on the Mercedes workers and their right to a free and fair election to unionize. And look, we don't say this lightly. The union busting has been nothing short of extreme. So we'll start off with the Business Council of Alabama, which is a huge force behind trying to defeat this union.
Behind the union busting blitz is one group, the Business Council of Alabama. The BCA claims that its main goal is to, quote, work on behalf of nearly 1 million working Alabamians. But looking at its leaders can tell us a lot about the organization's true mission. Its top brass represents the state's most powerful players, from utilities to banks to the healthcare sector. Alabama Governor Kay Ivey has been BCA's most powerful anti-union partner. She has repeatedly campaigned in strong opposition to auto worker unionization. Follow the money and you'll find that 7 of Ivey's top 12 campaign donors in the 2021-2022 election cycle have connections to the BCA. The BCA, through its Political Action Committee Progress PAC, gave Ivey $380,000 since 2011. Ivey also has a bunch of people working for her who used to work at the BCA in executive positions, including her Director of Legislative Affairs and one of her 2 deputy chiefs of staff.
Oh, it gets worse. So Governor Kay Ivey last Friday signed a bill that would revoke any economic incentives that the state provides a company if they voluntarily recognize a union or if the union does not hold a secret ballot for their election. The law does not take effect until next year, but clearly she did this as like a form of intimidation, a way of kind of putting her thumb on the scale when it comes to this effort to unionize. And the workers, by the way, will be voting on Friday of this week on whether or not they will join the United Auto Workers. John.
It's exciting to see them doing it, particularly following on from the big victories, specifically in the automotive industry. In unionization over the last year or two, it's been one of the areas where we've seen the most of that. It is depressing in this country to already know how this is going to play out in terms of the different groups. I don't know if it's going to succeed or not. I have no idea. We've seen a lot of drives succeed. We've seen others that were very high profile fail. But in this particular case, like it's also clear. She's like, we will take away the business incentives. If you as a corporation make the decision for yourselves that maybe having a union would be good for your company.
Right, exactly.
We don't care, we want your business to fail. Like, it's not about your business thriving and thus helping our state that you're in. It's we want your business if you do not encourage workers to have respect for their own worth, to advocate for their interests.
Yeah.
And we know Fox News, right-wing media are gonna line up with the business lobby. And regular conservatives are gonna be so brainwashed by right-wing media that they will think that all these incredibly wealthy politicians working hand in hand with incredibly wealthy members of the media and the business council, they're the ones that are working on behalf of the workers. It's just so amazing that you like there will always be people like Kay Ivey to take the positions that she's taking, but that she can take that position and still maintain the mantle of being for workers is what feels unacceptable to me.
Yeah, I mean, look, it really depends on what you mean by conservatives will be brainwashed against the unionization effort, because I would venture to say in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, the Mercedes I'm sure there's plenty of conservative Mercedes workers who are likely to cast their ballot in favor of unionizing. And we've seen other, like the John Deere strikes that took place, I believe it was last year. Those were not leftist workers, right? A lot of those people were hardcore conservatives. So when it comes to the workers themselves, this country has actually had a long-standing tradition of workers of all political persuasions coming together and demanding a seat at the table at their place of work, demanding better pay, better, benefits and stuff like that, which is why I think it's really, really important to consider the success of building broad coalitions in order to accomplish some of the economic policies that people want in this country. You're gonna have to, work with people that you might disagree with on other political issues if you're gonna wanna build that coalition to garner enough support for the policies that you want, right? And so you see that happening when it comes to workers specifically in workplaces that are trying to unionize or have already unionized. But in terms of conservative lawmakers, they love crushing unions.
Well, look, and I don't think that you're wrong, and certainly this might be an instance where you do see that working together. I'm just saying when you look at polls of what conservatives think about unions and whether they would be interested in their own workplace unionizing, the support is significantly lower than it is amongst Democrats, and significantly lower than it would have been a few decades ago.
Yeah, that is true, especially if you're comparing them to Democrats. But I am seeing. Look, I think that the Republican lawmakers espousing economic populism are full of crap, and they don't actually believe what they're saying and have no interest in pursuing policies that make work better for workers in this country. However, I do think that the economic populism espoused by some of the conservative voters is genuine, but I would say that there's a difference between most Democratic voters versus conservative voters, or Democrats versus Republicans in terms of how they feel about unions. Yes, there's a disparity there, but we'll see how it plays out. I'm hopeful that the workers at this plant in Alabama are going to unionize, but we'll see. So you have Kay Ivey getting involved, trying to discourage that from happening. You also have, the employers at Mercedes also attempting to crush the union. So the UAW has filed 6 charges against the company for disciplining employees for discussing unionization, banning the distribution of union materials, surveilling employees, discharging union supporters, forcing employees to attend captive audience meetings where of course they're given propaganda to avoid joining the union, and making statements suggesting the union activity is futile. The company even replaced its US CEO just a few weeks ago and then had a local Alabama pastor record a message to the workers telling them to give the new CEO a chance instead of unionizing.
Why?
By the way, you could totally love your boss, you could totally love your employers and still want to unionize because you think the workers should have a seat at the table, okay? And then here's some of the message which the factory blasted out in a text message to its workers.
Mercedes-Benz has been an uplift for people like me, for people who look like me. Mercedes has been through some changes, but this one change, I would suggest to us to be careful of. I'm grateful and thankful for this major shift that has happened in creating a new leadership opportunity and having a new CEO. I've taken the time to talk to him, to listen to him. He's empathetic. He cares about this company. In fact, he cares about people. Do we want to allow a particular group to determine that they have to go back and forth to negotiate something for us? Or do we want to be able to go directly to the company?
What? So that's the local Alabama pastor who recorded the message on behalf of Mercedes.
Does he work at Mercedes?
He's a local Alabama
pastor.
Then
why does he keep saying we? You don't work there. What are you talking about? We don't want to go back and forth. We want to go directly to, no, the union talks directly to the company. What's this back and forth that you're talking about? Look, it's so transparent. Like if you're a conservative, I just want you to imagine like that you are the CEO of a company or on the board of a company and you make a whole bunch of money and that theoretically you might make slightly less money if there was a union. What would you do to discourage people from unionizing? And they're just doing all of those things. Like don't be conned by any of this. It's just the tactics of people who really like making as much money as possible and don't give a damn if everybody else, I was gonna swear there, I'm not going to, does not do as well, I will say.
Look, Mercedes wants to use their profits to bolster the value of their stock. In 2023, they authorized $4 billion in stock buybacks.
Which benefits regular workers, obviously.
Obviously not, benefits the shareholders by inflating the value of the shares. And then in 2024, they did the same. They spent $3 billion on stock buybacks. They don't want to pay the workers more when they can inflate the value of their shares on behalf of their shareholders who they have a fiduciary responsibility to.
Can we hear the pastor talking about the $7 billion in stock buybacks over 2 years?
Maybe if he had a little more riz, sure, but that guy looks like he's about to fall asleep, so no.
I mean, I don't think his heart is in it, and that is to his credit. It shouldn't be, but yeah, it's cheap tactics. That's all it is. And I'm not saying that it's good for everyone literally everywhere, but I think that particularly in the automotive industry, especially, there's a very long history of workers' interests being, I think, well represented by unions. I think it's one of the long-standing, strongest unions in the US. You've seen a lot of growth in other auto manufacturers.
Yep.
There's a few that haven't been cracked into, and obviously, as you pointed out, the South is a very difficult area in terms of that. It's good to see some people fighting back. We've had this like decades-long downslide in sentiment for unions, and obviously something needs to change.
I agree. Luckily, one of the best things to happen to the United Auto Workers in recent years is that they have wonderful leadership with Sean Fain. So crossing my fingers for the workers in Alabama. We'll see how this plays out. As I said, they're gonna vote on Friday, and we'll be sure to update you on the story when we learn more. For now, we're gonna take a break, and when we come back, tough nuggies for Steve Bannon. Eclectic Miscellanea writes in, thank you for your generous super chat, Eclectic. And more importantly, thank you for your unwavering support and your feedback to the show. So Eclectic writes in and says, Anna, thank you for all you've done to cover the growing labor movement. It's too bad Michael Brooks isn't here to see the success unions have had recently, but I think he would be proud of your coverage and deep dives on issues impacting workers. Thank you, Eclectic, I appreciate that. Guy on his own, Crusade 35 says, John and Anna, if you had to choose The Penguin or House of the Dragon season 2, which of these two TV series do you think will outperform this year? I don't know what The Penguin is, so I'm gonna go with House of the Dragon.
It's a show about the Penguin from Batman, which I had not heard of.
Oh, okay. Then definitely House of the Dragon.
Well, but the way it was worded was outperform, like outperform expectations. Then maybe you have an honest question. I imagine House of the Dragon will only be 100 times bigger than the Penguin, but who knows? I don't know, I'm not a big DC guy. I am excited for House of the Dragon.
I'm super excited. I like House of the Dragon a lot. I enjoyed it, so I'm looking forward to season 2. We have Robe Life. Oh God, can't wait to get into my cozy little robe. As someone whose great-grandfather was part of the first sit-down strike in US history, we're all pulling for the workers in Alabama. That's amazing, wow, yeah. And we're definitely pulling for the workers in Alabama here at TYT as well. YTP Renewed says-
Well, don't speak for me, I wanna talk to the CEO. Apparently he's very persuasive.
No, I really want to have a sit down with the random Alabama pastor who apparently has not so strong feelings about this, but
unionize that religious establishment is what I say.
Okay.
Maybe it is, I don't know.
All right, YTP Renewed says, reminds me of Mars, have Hamas build subways. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out.
Wait, what?
That had to be on a first hour story, but I'm trying to remember which one.
Eric Adams thing.
Oh yes, Eric Adams, that's right. So that was a second hour story. John, come on, pay attention. Okay, Christopher writes in and says, ex-lifeguard, low pay, and you do have to be a solid swimmer. I mean, I would assume you do. Able to operate in a life and death situation, but the job can be dull. Pay more, blatant. I mean, I think everyone should be paid more, okay? So and by the way, my best friend was a lifeguard and she did say the job was actually like shockingly dull, but she got a great tan. She really did. Yanni S writes in.
Pros and cons.
Yep. Hey Anna, stay positive, we all make mistakes. I became a TYT member for you, John, Jank, Waz, and of course, Dr. Richie. Nice. Thank you, and I'll always correct my mistakes. I don't ever want to spread misinformation unwittingly, but sometimes it happens, so here we are. What's up, everyone? We've got limited time, so let's get right to our next story.
Steve, are you worried about going to prison? Never. Because I ain't going to prison. It's all a sham.
Is it? Is it really? Now that was Steve Bannon, one of Trump's top aides and advisors. He might be going to prison, and that's based on what the DOJ is requesting in regard to his contempt of Congress conviction. Now, federal prosecutors have requested the judge overseeing Steve Bannon's criminal contempt of Congress case order that he begin his 4-month prison sentence now. Now, ex-Trump advisor Steve Bannon was sentenced to 4 months in prison after he refused to comply or respond to a subpoena from the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th riots. Now, in a 3-page filing, prosecutors said that no substantial legal questions remain over Bannon's 2-count conviction for refusing to provide documents or testimony to a House committee probing the January 6th, 2021 attack after a panel of the US Circuit Court of Appeals for the DC Circuit on Friday rejected Bannon's appeal on all grounds. So he appealed the convictions. The appeals court looked at his appeal and they're like, "Oh, it's nice. We're gonna rip it up." I'm not gonna rip it up right now because
it was disrespectful to him. It was like Nancy Pelosi inspired, I think.
So there's more. Back in 2022, US District Judge Carl Nichols agreed to postpone Bannon's sentence as he appealed the ruling, and that is what has happened already. He said that Bannon should be able to argue that he did not willfully refuse to cooperate based on legal advice to ignore the subpoena. That's the only way that he would win on appeal. But as stated before, the 3-judge panel unanimously rejected Bannon's appeal, saying that it had no basis. The panel of the DC Circuit Court of Appeals said in their opinion Friday, quote, "We conclude that none of the information sought in the trial subpoenas was relevant to the elements of the contempt offense, nor to any affirmative defense Bannon was entitled to present at trial. The judgment of conviction and sentence is affirmed." And it's not immediately clear when Judge Nichols will rule on what prosecutors are requesting here to basically send Steve Bannon to prison immediately to serve the 4-month sentence. However, he has given Bannon until Monday of next week to respond to the DOJ's request. He was originally set to respond by tomorrow. However, he was given an extension after he filed a motion to delay. And that seems to be the tactic with Trump and everyone else in Trump's orbit. Delay, delay, delay. So what do you think about this?
Yeah, again, it'll be fascinating to see what he comes up with if he does respond or if he tries to go for some sort of other appeal. Like, he was told he had to come in. He refused to. He knew what the penalty was when he did it. He was the big, strong, tough man beforehand. I'm not gonna abide by it. I don't care if they throw me in prison. Please don't throw me in prison, please don't.
Did he say that? Did he say, I don't care if they throw me in prison?
I think I remember that. It's Steve Bannon, so I don't really care if I'm right or not, but I believe so. Look, it's posturing, all of them. He wasn't the only one. Peter Navarro did the exact same thing. All of them were like, this is not legitimate, we don't have to abide by this, but it was literally the law. Consequences were laid out. The advice of counsel thing wasn't accurate because his lawyers did not advise him that he wouldn't suffer any consequences for not. Like, that's just a stupid argument. And by the way, he has already been granted so much leniency. He was initially convicted back in 2022. They spent like a year and a half looking into this. Dear God, the guy's got like 7 months to live, and they are dragging this thing out. There might never be justice if he just keels over beforehand. But honestly, like, if he delays long enough, then theoretically, maybe Donald Trump gets into office and gives him yet another pardon like he has in the past. On the other hand, does he want to delay if the delay would not push this till past the election? Because if he goes right now, he goes for 4 months, but then he gets out in time for coup number 2. But if he delays it for just a couple of months, he might be in prison for Trump to lose the election, and then he won't be there to storm the Capitol again. So I would be careful, Bannon. You might just want to go in now, actually.
That's a really good point. That is a very good point.
Because if he went in now, he'd come out in September.
Yeah.
He'd have 2 months to tell people about how they're gonna steal the election through mules and things.
So look, there's a possibility that Bannon is gonna attempt to get the Supreme Court involved in this. But if you are under the assumption that the Supreme Court is gonna side with him, just don't be under that assumption, because the Supreme Court did not side with Peter Navarro. And Peter Navarro ended up having to go to prison because of that. So we'll see how it plays out, but you do the crime, you do the time. That's what the experts say. So we'll see how this plays out.
And if it rhymes, it's legit.
It is legit, yes. All right. Unfortunately, we got to talk about John Fetterman's latest. I don't know what has happened to this guy, but it's not good.
Hi, Senator.
Oh, I didn't expect this.
No,
I didn't. Oh my God.
Well, there you have a United States Senator, John Fetterman, the Democratic senator from Pennsylvania who ran as a populist progressive, recording one of his constituents who's trying to ask him questions. And well, he has also reached a depressing new low. So when mildly, and we're gonna show you the video, mildly confronted by an environmental activist from the Sunrise Movement, he not only refused to answer her questions, as you see in the clip, he also actively mocks her. So the group posted the video on X with this caption. Last week, Fetterman got on Fox News to criticize Biden's liquefied gas export pause. In 2018, he had joined Sunrise and Representative Daniel to rally against fracked gas pipelines. When a constituent asked why he flipped, he mocked her, then walked into a member-only elevator. So let's watch the rest of the video.
Well, I'm from Chester County in Pennsylvania, and I am really concerned about the way that pipelines are being built in our communities and on our, in our backyards, threatening our lives, our water. And in 2018, you actually joined us for a protest when you were running for lieutenant governor of the pipeline running through Chester County through my community. And you, why the change of heart? Why are you standing with people of Pennsylvania right now?
Well, I would be more.
That was unbelievable. I mean, look, the amount of disdain he has for his own constituents is incredible. Let's go to the next Sunrise Movement tweet, because I mean, this is such a notable flip-flop and change. He ran as one thing and is something completely different. I mean, he's making Kyrsten Sinema blush.
Yeah, no.
Right? Okay, so throwback to 2018, the 2018 version of John Fetterman, who rallied with young people to stop fracked gas pipelines. So you see him at that rally. He's taking pictures with some of the other activists who were there. John, this is the kind of stuff. Look, if John Fetterman had campaigned as the type of politician he is today, fine. I mean, I don't agree with him and it is what it is, but he's actually doing a lot more damage than just simply flip-flopping. Because by flip-flopping, what he does is he destroys any trust or faith or hope people have in our elections.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what's the point? You never know what you think you're gonna get one thing and then you end up getting something entirely different. I mean, he did a total 180.
I know, like so much so that obviously it never would be, but it feels like if you've only been following politics for a few years, you must see like a Fetterman or a few years back a Sinema, and you must think like, wait, can they legally do this? Like, you 100% misrepresented who you were, not like in the normal sort of politician exaggerating or lying way, but like your entire identity was either a lie or maybe in the case of Fetterman, something changed. I don't know, because this is not the only issue where he is a fundamentally different person, not just on policy, but like as you said, the open disdain, the open contempt. He hated that young activist the second he saw her. And look, it's a weird thing in America where like there's nobody people in politics hate more than environmental activists. Like people who are passionate about the most collective good are hated more than anyone else. And I don't know why that is, but it's definitely true. But I would say, similar to your first thought, I think that might be worse than Kyrsten Sinema.
It is.
Because Kyrsten Sinema, she'll post like a really snarky thing on Instagram and she'll walk away from protesters and not respond or flee to the bathroom. But his was like more openly hateful. Like that was not necessarily worse than the downward thumb,
down, yeah.
But it's on a similar sort of level.
I agree, I totally agree. It's like almost like taunting your constituents. And look, more importantly, in the case of John Fetterman, taunting the people who rallied behind you, defended you after you suffered that stroke and the media was coming after you pretty viciously.
Which we did many times.
I know, and like, I know, I have deep regrets for that because, look, if I'm being completely honest, during that election, Fetterman debate, like it was after his stroke and he did the debate against his opponent, right? This is right before the election, the Senate election that he unfortunately won. But that was an awful debate. Like it was awful for Fetterman, right? And I just remember making a decision to not even discuss it because it was so bad and I didn't want to criticize him too much given that he had suffered a stroke. But I feel, again, sick to my stomach because look, we should always tell the truth and we should, even if we think we're gonna get backlash from the audience. And I think at that time I was a little bit afraid that if I was too critical of Fetterman, I would get backlash. And I wasn't gonna be critical of him as a person. I just felt like no, the symptoms in the aftermath of this stroke were actually pretty bad, right? But people voted for him anyway, and people defended him, and then he turned around and totally screwed them over. It's disgusting.
Yeah, 100%. And I know some people, I've seen speculation that this much of a change, is it related to some sort of brain thing?
I don't know.
And I'm not a doctor, I have no idea. That seems like baseless speculation. But the alternative is, oh, no. It wasn't a brain thing. He was just a massive liar and fraud.
Yeah.
So honestly, while he would probably hate the people who speculate about his brain, they're honestly, like, they're doing him a solid in not assuming that he's just been completely misrepresenting himself, which I find to be much worse.
Final bit of information here. So in a statement after the interaction, Sunrise Movement put Fetterman on blast, saying that Fetterman has sold out to the oil and gas lobby, who have given him $54,000. In 2016 and 2018, he pledged to ban fracking and joined a Sunrise protest against natural gas pipelines. Now he's more concerned with pleasing his billionaire donors and then protecting the people of Pennsylvania who have pipelines and fracking wells being built in our backyards. So it is depressing. I just hope that this doesn't lead to what I'm most concerned about, people just losing faith in elections overall. You never know when someone's gonna flip-flop like this, and I'm so sad that Fetterman did, but corrupt politicians are gonna do what they're gonna do. All right, that does it for the main show. Bonus episode next, tyt.com/join, and we'll see you there.